So this episode, so many of the individuals resonated with me. I honestly can't say one, I saw myself completely. I saw myself in so many of the people in episode 2. I felt Crystal's story the most because I can remember being young and feeling some of the things that she felt. And what do you do? Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is my second episode of my discussion about mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I started watching Oprah Winfrey and formerly Prince Harry's documentary, The Me You Can't See. It is a wonderful documentary, and if you have not watched it, I cannot say enough how everyone needs to watch this. Whether you suffer from mental illness or you know someone who suffers from mental illness, we all need to have the discussion so that people feel comfortable coming and talking to us about the things that they are dealing with. And so for episode 2, I cannot pinpoint one particular person that resonated with me the most. I saw bits of me in each story. The stories for this episode centered heavily around depression. And I was first diagnosed with depression the first time I attempted suicide. And I had suicidal thoughts long before I actually attempted suicide. This will be the first time my family's hearing that. And I remember in the episode, Harry was talking about when Megan had her bout with depression, and what scared her the most was that she had these suicidal thoughts, but she hadn't snapped. She was in her right mind. Everything was clear. And I got that wholeheartedly because it's hard to explain. It really is. And when I went to therapy after, my therapist actually traced my issues all the way back to when I was really young. Things that I had not thought about that impacted me. I didn't think much of it. It was just, life. And I had carried so much of that with me for so long. And I cannot even sit and say today that I'm healed from all of the past, because I'm not. And that's the one thing I think that most people need to understand about mental health. My past is always going to be my past, and it's always going to be in my mind. So now we're going to look at a couple of clips from the episode. There is Harry speaking about Megan. Alex is the young lady that Oprah Winfrey kind of took underneath her wings to help. And then there's also Crystal. And then I'll come back and give you a little bit more about myself and the takeaways from the episode.
That I believe that so many people go through is, firstly, the admittance that something is wrong and the need to ask for help. Now, everyone's different, but what I've learned from that is it's not what's wrong with you, it's what's happened to you. And I think that is such an important point, because there is no shame in this. 6 months pregnant at the time. What perhaps people don't understand is earlier that evening, Megan decided to share with me the suicidal thoughts and the practicalities of how she was going to end her life. The scariest thing for her was her clarity of thought. She hadn't lost it. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't self-medicating, be it through pills or through alcohol. She was absolutely sober. She was completely sane.
My whole life is messed up. I think of death, it scares me. I scare myself. It's crazy that my mental health goes back to that far, like being 13, 14. Going to college changed the way that I navigated depression because you're always around people. So there was a lot of like compartmentalizing. Like, this is not the time to have a breakdown.
As I was saying, each one of these I really understood, because especially the Asian American young lady, because depression is so hard to put into words. And from a young age, I've always been very outspoken. So in my church, I was the little girl with the big voice. And so the little girl with the big voice and the big personality, of course, we put her in programs, and we put her in positions of secretary and treasurer and vice president and president. And then when I became president of Sunbeam, I traveled and I went to different churches and I gave speeches to adults and all of these type of things. And of course, it leads from Sunbeam, that's the little kids. Then you go up to Red Circle Girls, and that's the teenage years. And again, I'm put out to the public, and inside, I remember being so sad and not really understanding why I was sad, because it should have been something like great. Now, don't get me wrong. I remember when I was crowned Sunbeam president, I had my little crown, my sash. I walked around the neighborhood with it. I was so ecstatic. But with my counseling, what I learned was that I missed a lot of my childhood, and I had to grow up really fast. So a lot of my Saturdays when I was young was not spent playing with kids. It was spent at my speech tutor's house, going over my speech and learning to articulate my words and project my voice and all of these different things. And I did it because that's what I was told to do. And I remember the things I wanted to do, I couldn't do because either I had practice or we just didn't have the money. And so as a young child trying to process all of that, I really wasn't able to process it, because as adults, we don't think that we owe children explanations for things. And this is by no means attack at my mom or being a bad parent, because my mom was an awesome mother. She sacrificed for us. She did the best that she knew how to do. And as time goes on and we learn and we get better, we learn to listen more. When I became a mom the first time, like my mom, I was young. And so a lot of lessons I learned in the process of being a mom. And I think she was the exact same way. So it's trial and error. You do what you think is best, and then you look back and you realize that that might not have been best. But neither here nor there. All of that compounded a lot of things for me. It created anxiety, but it really compounded my depression. So what took me over, because I liked when Harry and Oprah say something to the extent of, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. And I had to go back to those moments of things that happened. But what put me into full-blown depression was I married a man outside of my mother's wishes. And we dated for a few years before we got married. And in our dating, it was complete and utter chaos. It was so chaotic. And while we were dating, he actually got someone else pregnant. And like the ride or die, I forgave him and we're going to make this work and all these wonderful things. And so after the kids came, it became a pull between me and her, and I began to feel less than and less than. And in this marriage, I was lonely so many days and nights. I didn't have enough, I couldn't put enough words on it to explain how completely worthless and foolish I felt in that marriage. And I walked into my kitchen and there was a bottle of pain meds. And I had been thinking for so long about just ending it all. It would be so much easier. My mom could take care of Madison. You know, I had planned everything out in my head. And I swallowed that bottle of pills. Yeah. I was rushed to the hospital. It was an eye-opening thing for me. And I want to be able to sit here and tell you that after that moment, I left him. You know, that was yes, you are worth so much more than this moment. It wasn't. I stayed probably for another 2-3 months before I actually left. And I literally, with the help of some counseling, and I did my first ever 21-day fast. And at the end of that fast, because this was at this time my second marriage, and I didn't want to get a divorce. I wanted God to fix it. And at the end of that 21-day fast, God gave me the answer that I had been fasting for, and that was, it was time to leave, and it was okay. I was in counseling from 2007 until 2010, 2011, 2010. I was in counseling until 2010. I remember, yeah. So it was an ongoing process. And through that time of counseling and therapy, I was on medicine. I was learning different ways to help myself manage and cope and deal with life and be who I knew that I could be, which was a strong person who could deal with the challenges of life of day to day. In 2009, I actually stopped taking my meds, through my doctor. Of course, I didn't just cut it off. I told my doctor that I wanted to start weaning myself off of the medicine. And so by 2009, I was completely off of the meds. I have only had to go back on my depression meds once since then. And whenever now I feel myself slipping back into that place, then I exercise. But exercise is not just when I feel myself slipping back into that place. Exercise just makes me, keeps me in a good headspace. When I don't exercise, I feel like crap. And not depressed, I just don't feel like I'm tired. And that's so ironic that exercise gives me energy. But you learn about all of the things that are released when you exercise, the happy hormones. So it makes sense when you start learning these things. So I try to exercise. If I could learn how to exercise and control my diet and stay away from the carbs and the sugar, honey, I'll be fine. I will be so fine. But that's a story for another day. But I'm so glad you guys came back to listen and check out this second episode. I hope and pray that you are having discussions. Again, if it's not in the comment section, please have these discussions in your home. Have these discussions with your friends. Have them with your families. It is so important that we normalize mental health. Y'all know I love you. Peace.